Oklahoma and Brett Venables have landed a twitched up interior defender in defensive lineman Brian Harris out of Jacksonville Mandarin. Not saying he's Gerald McCoy, Tommy Harris, anybody like that, but he has that type of playing style, and you hope his upside's anywhere in that conversation, but he's got a lot of ability. We'll break down the film, break down the specs on him. This is Group Chat Sports. We are covering portal, recruiting, coaching movement. If it's transactional college football, we're covering it all across the country from Oklahoma to Ohio. Like and subscribe to this show if you're interested in transactions in college football. We will cover them all. With Brian Harris, let's get to the specs on this player as we look at his 247 profile. Like I mentioned, from Jacksonville Mandarin, alma mater of a lot of guys, current players that are prominent. You think of Carson Beck at Miami, formerly at Georgia. He's a Mandarin product. There's been plenty more, particularly in the defensive line. Number 63 defensive lineman in the country, according to the composite. Basically a high 3-star ranking, but the upside, I think, is beyond that. Look at some of the schools in the mix: Oklahoma, Alabama. I know Penn State had him on campus as well. So just looking at the player as we jump into the film, what jumps out is just the upward trajectory of this guy. When you watch the film, when you watch the path that he's taken, right, as a recruit, it's all on the way up. So here we go. As we put on some of the film, explosive, twitched up interior defender. This is a guy who lives in the backfield. I mentioned Gerald McCoy, Tommy Harris. Not saying he is that caliber of player, but just in terms of being that three technique, that playing style, how he's effective. It's getting on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Defensive line MVP of the Under Armour Next Camp in Orlando. That was this year. So that was after his junior year. Wins that DL MVP. On the season in 24, 29 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles in 10 games. But keep in mind, this is a guy who tore his ACL as a 10th grader. So he's really been on the way up. You see him play defensive end. You see him play three technique. It's all about that first step. What I love about this guy, not just the first step quickness, but the GPA is a 3.9 student. So defensive tackles, a lot of times you're worried about those guys mentally. Not always, but usually the guys with that first step took the handoff there, was first one off the line. A lot of times those guys maybe don't have the grades or the, the brains of offensive linemen. That's why that's the old joke. The guys with brains are on offensive line. The other ones are on defensive line, the mean ones with athleticism. But I think with Harris, you have both of those things in abundance. And of course, the upward trajectory when you look at the way he played towards the end of the year, coming off that ACL as a sophomore, and then what he did this year in the camp circuit. That's why I think schools like Alabama, Penn State, South Carolina are interested. You think of Oklahoma and the state of Florida on the defensive line, R. Mason Thomas, Nick Bonito, 2 guys from Broward County. Nick Bonito, one of the best young pass rushers in the NFL. R. Mason Thomas, one of the best pass rushers to me in the country right now, probably the most underrated player in the SEC potentially. I mean, he's really, really good. And different position, those guys are on the edge. You see Harris as an interior projection, although he does play on the edge in high school. But just the state of Florida in general has been a nice spot for Oklahoma for these explosive players. Quotes from Harris on the committee said, "I'm going to Oklahoma. It's just a different experience. Coach Venables has such a huge impact on my life just off the coaching he already gave me without even being a coach. That says a lot to me. His personality is so infectious. He'll wake up early in the morning, be the first one up and the loudest in the room. And I feel I'd like to wake up in the morning being coached by Coach Venables and Coach Bates, seeing that Coach Venables and Bates have a home feeling already and are players' coaches. I already know I'm going to be taken care of." Bates, Coach Christian Wilkins, who, again, not saying he's the same caliber of player, but in terms of the way he's effective in this playing style, that is a comp as far as what you, in a perfect world, how it ends up. Dexter Lawrence, maybe a bigger player, but an explosive player, certainly a talented player from Clemson. Harris is originally from Philadelphia, moved to Florida later in his career. So he's actually really more of a Philly guy than a Florida guy. But either way, you are going across the plains to land a talented player. Stanford was in the mix here. Again, I mentioned the GPA. I think that's a factor. West Virginia, they like these undersized, explosive guys. Although I don't think Harris is necessarily undersized, but he's definitely a penetrator. NC State schools had a lot of success with these kind of guys, turning them from 3-star players into NFL picks, NFL players. So you like the company you're keeping as far as from an evaluation standpoint. Number 38 ranked class in the country right now for Oklahoma, but they're just getting started. A lot of work to be done. Quarterbacks, an area to watch there. Obviously, does Jaden O'Neal stick around? they flirted with Bo Bentley and other guys. So that's a position to watch. But I think bread and butter, you're talking about the defensive line and the ability of Oklahoma to restock that position and really get back to what Coach Venables is known for, which is a ferocious defense. I think he took a big step in that direction last year. Need to keep that going, obviously, to compete in the SEC, even if you add a John Mateer and all the talent they've added on the offensive line, at the running back position, Jaden Ott. It's all going to long term, right? That's short term. Long term, if you're Oklahoma, you've historically had some studs on that defensive line. And I think that's something that Coach Venables wants to get back to. And Brian Harris is a step in that direction. Remember to like and subscribe to this show if you're an Oklahoma fan, if you're a fan of any college football team and you just want to know who's going where, where's the recruiting class looking like. You don't just want to wait till sign day. You want to be up to date on what's happening, who's available, who's not available, who's decommitting, who's committing. We'll cover all of that on group chat, especially as we get into these visit seasons, which are coming up right now. Official visits are getting hot and heavy. There's got a lot of movement. We'll have you covered on Group Chat Sports. Like and subscribe.